Breaking Down the Law is sponsored by Battleborn Injury Lawyers.
The legal battle continues of the deportation of more than 200 alleged members of a Venezuelan gang. It started March 15th when a district court judge in Washington, D.C. issued an injunction against the planned deportation. But 2 planes were already in the air, and another one took off just after the judge's injunction. Well, on Monday, the Trump administration and its officials argued to a D.C. appeals court that the injunction should be overturned. So what is the legal basis for the deportations and the district court's injunction against it? And where should we expect things to go moving forward? For all of that, we're turning to attorney Matthew Hoffmann with the Battleborn Injury Lawyers. A lot of moving parts here. Let's first talk about where the Trump administration stands and why they say that they actually did this.
Yeah, so President Trump this moved really quick. March 14th, he signs an executive order invoking the Alien Enemies Act of 1798. This has only been used in wartime, the War of 1812, World War I, and World War II. That's it. But it basically gives tremendous power to the executive branch to remove people from the country quickly with very little due process. It's only been used in times of war before, and the statute requires either a time of war or an invasion, but the invasion has to be caused by a foreign nation or government. They cite that as the reason for this. So he signs it on the 14th. On the 15th, they clearly knew where these people were, and they round up over 200 people who are alleged to be these gang members from Venezuela. And quickly, 5 of them, the deportees, get a law firm, the ACLU. They file an emergency habeas action, basically asking for emergency relief to a federal judge in D.C. The hearing is going on. The D.C. judge says, look, they're still entitled to due process. Regardless. Right. So the Constitution says due process and all those kind of rights applies to, they use the words person or persons or people. They don't say citizens. So it applies to anybody on our soil, here legally or illegally. And the judge says, look, they're entitled to due process. I don't care if the plane's in the air, turn it around. And that's at, I think, 6:35 p.m. Well, the planes were already in the air, and they were over the Gulf of America and elsewhere. And then the written order isn't issued until 7:35 p.m. But in the written order, which is just a minute order, it's not a formal signed order, but it's in writing, but it's silent on the whole turn the plane around thing. And so the Trump administration is saying, look, we didn't disobey your order. What was actually the order, what was in writing, doesn't say anything about turning the planes around. And the 5 people who were the named plaintiffs, we did not deport them. We deported others. The judge is saying, well, no, it applied to, I said everybody. Right. These 5 and everybody like them. And then the 3rd plane, that was sent after all this. But on that one, the 38 people, I think it was, on the plane, they had separate deportation orders that were final, unrelated to the Alien Enemies Act. So I think they're in the clear there. But so that's what happened, and it creates this situation of what now? Right? They're gone. Right. They're in El Salvador. Yeah, which is not American soil. Mm-hmm. Yes, there's a cooperative agreement, but it's not like Guantanamo, which is American soil. This is a foreign country. So now we get to the next steps, which is the appeal. And so they appealed it to the appellate court, asking that they overturn the judge. I don't know if that's going to happen. The judge heard a reconsideration motion and reaffirmed his decision, made it very clear. So you have the judge's order stands. The appellate court is now going to hear it. But let's say that the appellate court agrees with the court. And then it's appealed to the Supreme Court. And then the Supreme Court says, Trump administration, you were wrong. The Alien Enemies Act, this invasion, I know that President Trump has called it an invasion at the border, but you can't just declare that and then inherit these incredible powers. Right. It has to be an invasion by a foreign nation or government. And an organized crime syndicate is not a government or a foreign nation. And let's say the Supreme Court says, no, it was a valid order, you were wrong. What's the remedy? They're gone. They're not here.
And they're trying to figure out who some of these people are, and some of them are saying, hey, I'm not in a gang. In fact, one person said, I'm a hairdresser. Yeah. I don't know what this is about. And now they're in prison, possibly forever.
Yeah, well, and that's the other thing, is that in El Salvador, a huge group of them, like 30 of them, are being represented by a law firm there that is apparently being paid for by the El Salvador government. And they're arguing, hey, we have no jurisdiction to hold these people. They need to be released. So by the time this gets through the courts here, you could have these 200 people And not only are they in another country, they're just gone. They're in the wind.
Right.
They might not even be in El Salvador anymore.
Before we run out of time, just
Yeah.
really quickly, because people may be thinking, you know, there's a lack of sympathy because they may think that maybe they are perhaps gang members or maybe they were here illegally. Why should Americans care if the Trump administration or any future administration for that matter is allowed to do something like this?
Yeah, and that's, you know, on an issue like this, it's like it's easy for people to get emotional and think, oh, you know, you're pro-Trump or anti-Trump or this. Just legally, we always want to be careful before you take due process away from anybody here. Due process is just the right to be heard. You know, in these immigration proceedings, whether you're illegal or legal, you have a right to plead your case. It'll be somewhat informal in some immigration proceedings because they're civil, they're not criminal. But if you take away due process and you look at the concentration of power that this gives, the last time this was invoked, we had Japanese Americans end up in internment camps, right? That's the severity we're talking about here. So it's a very, very big deal. And that's what the courts are there for, to interpret, is this really an invasion or not? And so the fact that this happened so swiftly tells me that the administration, they just didn't care, right? They didn't care because if you look at it, they achieved their objective. They're gone and they're not coming back.
Right.
But yeah, people should care about this because without due process, you know, any group could be targeted by any president, future president, and be labeled as an invaders or something, and then all of a sudden this tremendous power comes down and you're on a plane to El Salvador.
With no recourse.
Exactly.
Okay,
Very,
I
very
appreciate
scary.
you for explaining that to us because I think a lot of people may not realize what could be at stake here. And we do have that gang name at our lower third, but again, these are alleged gang members. We do want to say that they have not been proven to be such, some of them saying that they are in fact not. Thank you so much as always for breaking it down for us. And if you have any legal questions that you want Matt to answer, he is here every Wednesday. Just email us at breakingdownthelaw@news3lv.com.